वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्ति। So, here further meditation is explained. So, it's interesting because the meditation that we do has all these different aspects, and all these different aspects are mentioned in the Upanishad. Yeah. So, the chronology, chronologically it's a little different than how we do. But this is, we saw that the first thing was what? That you have to relax your body. Yeah. Now it is talking about what to do with the prana. Prana means the one of the biggest expression of prana is your respiratory functions. So that means now here in the next verse it is showing prana prapat deha Sanyukta cheshtaha kshine prane nasikayoho yutsita drishtan ayuktamiva vahanam nam vidvan mano dharayet apramataha. Okay. So here he says that the second thing which is connected to, generally when we are in waking, we operate from a quite superficial level of the mind. Our mind can have lot more depth than we normally operate from. And this is why whenever you engage in something when you are totally absorbed, there is so much joy because you operate from the depth. So one has to discover that depth. It is very, very important. The minute, and it's just a matter of practice, either, for example, there are books written by the flow. So that flow is, no matter what you are doing, when you operate, either you are telling yourself, oh, I'm doing such a boring job, and oh, I have to do this, and oh, it's such a pain, and then you are kind of doing it and you're dragging yourself. But when you do it from a certain depth, there is a kind of an effortless engagement which makes any job into a pleasure. So this is something that one needs to find. It's not like, generally we are categorizing this is a boring work and this is really what I like to do. So most of our time is done getting things done which according to us are boring. And then we want that 1 or 2 hours where we really like to do things, and then we want to do things and we are enthusiastic. That it has to change. No matter what you are doing, there has to be, when you operate from depth and when you operate with the optimum efficiency, there is pleasure. You have to convert your whole life into pleasure. It's fun. Life is fun. And that means you have to make it like that. That heaviness, as Surya says, has to go. So in that flow, there was a very nice example. And that example is actually quite telling because he gives an example. People say, yeah, but how to fool myself and say, oh, this is interesting, but actually it is quite boring. Are you not kind of, are you not like superimposing something which, so he gives an example of an assembly line worker. And this assembly line worker, his job, is working in a bottling factory. So his job is to put the cap on the bottle. So the bottle gets produced, then the whatever is inside the bottle also gets filled, and his job in assembly line is what? Put a cap. So from 9 in the morning till 5 in the evening, all he has to do is what? Put a cap on the bottle.
That is moving.
Exactly. So he raises his question, so how are you going to find, some, like joy or depth and all in this world? It's stupid. I mean, and it's mindless and it is boring, and how can you change it, right? Without deluding yourself. So then he gives an example of a real person who's working in this assembly line, and he says, of course, everybody else who's working in this factory is bored. And because they are so bored, because they have to do this from 9 to 5, and they have to do it day after day after day, so what do? They all, after 5, what do they want to do? They want to entertain themselves, because they are just bored. So what do they do for entertainment? Go to local bar and have a few drinks, because that's an instant kind of a release from this boredom. So this is a kind of a cliche life of an assembly line worker. He's so bored doing a mindless job that he has to resort to something which will entertain him or her and give some kick. So he goes to and he has a few drinks. Now in that process of having drinks, these burdens that the mind becomes what? A little dull, in the sense that the thinking process is kind of become, so the person finds some kind of a relief. So the more relief the person finds, what is a tendency? You want more of it. And this is how person becomes almost alcoholic. Now, what then happens is, this person goes home, and then what the person finds oneself with wife and kids and all. So now the alcohol, a lot of violence is connected to what? Alcohol. So that means if wife says something which irritates you because you have with lot of difficulty pulled yourself out of boredom and got some release. Now if a wife says something that you don't like, then what happens? You blow up. And in fact, the wife sees you in that state, and obviously she cannot but say, what have you done to yourself? And that triggers one whole big reaction, and then there is violence. The kids are almost scared. Our teacher used to say that, if you want to figure out which is a healthy home, you don't have to ask anything. You just go to this home and you sit there. And you sit and you see that when a father comes home from work, what do kids do? If they run away to their bedroom, that means there is no communication here, there is fear. People are not comfortable with each other. People are just finding safe corners to protect themselves. But if the father comes and the kids run and the wife runs to welcome, then it is a healthy home. Because there is no longer, when you love somebody, it's effortless. You go towards that person and you communicate and you are one with that person. So that means, he says, you know what, we look for, what are the indicators of a pleasant home and all. It's just very simple data, and you can tell. Very subtle, but very truthful. It will give you the true picture. So this is what, so that means, now this alcoholic father, when he goes home, then what will happen? The kids will run to their, this thing. Wife will be all away, trying to protect, because today don't know what will happen. They are scared to speak up, because that speaking up can trigger such a huge response. So that means everybody is under fear. Nobody is feeling secure. So this is a life of an assembly line worker. How will you get him out of this almost seems like if he doesn't have much of an option of going to, I mean, he has studied, he's, let's say, in his mid-40s, he doesn't have much option to enhance his career or whatever. You feel the person is stuck. It's kind of a dead end and the person is stuck. And you feel that somehow life has been so unfair to me because I find myself in a position where I don't have options like somebody else does. And the more you tell yourself, not only you feel miserable, but you develop resentment towards somebody who for you has more. So you are a bundle of dissatisfaction. Now you have to pull yourself out. What will you do? So in this book, he writes an example of one assembly line worker who's different. And he studies this person. How is he different? He's doing exactly the same job as everybody else. And the only thing which makes difference is what he tells himself. He challenges himself and he says, yeah, on an average, I have been producing per hour, they have a ratio. So that means how many bottles you can put a cap on. So that is your productivity. So then, it's not external, he challenges himself and he tells himself, how can I be more productive? His mind has shifted from what I'm bored to how can I do better. It's his personal challenge. It is not for outside show. Nothing has changed. What he tells himself has changed. And it's not, what he tells himself is not based on fantasy, it is based on facts. So then he says, okay, let me see, up to now, I have been able to, on an average, put 50 caps. Let me see if I can increase it to 60. The person is creating one's own challenges, one's own standards, and one wants to excel. Shift in mindset. So how is he coming to work? Not bored and, oh, one more day I have to do the same old thing. He tells himself, let's see today if I can do 60. Then after a couple of months, when the person is doing better, then he will increase slightly and say, let's say I'm doing 65. Then the person tells oneself that, anybody who is in assembly line worker, they all have productivity, but they all have errors. So that means out of 10 bottles, you do 9 properly, but you do one not so properly. You don't close it so well, or you make it very tight, so it is not perfect. So then he tells himself, not only I want to increase the productivity, I want to reduce the error. My message to myself. He goes and he engages, and in that engagement, there is joy. Mind is learning to act from a certain depth. The superficial mind is bored, is complaining, is dissatisfied, is resentful. The minute you discover some depth within you, by giving yourself different messages which are not based on fantasy but reality, you shift. These shifts in life are critical because it pulls you out of your rut. So then he started telling himself, so he goes to work cheerfully. When he is able to meet his own targets, when he leaves work, he is cheerful. When he is cheerful, then when he leaves work, he doesn't need to go and take a few drinks to amuse or entertain himself, he's happy. Doesn't need all these kind of external whatever, that people tend to be addicted to. Doesn't need, because I'm cheerful. So that means the person doesn't have the need. When the person goes home cheerfully, what? The members feel comfortable. The members feel secure, because the behavior of this person is not going to be unpredictable. Person is content. When you are content, your behavior will not be erratic. So therefore, this is then what? His relationships also change. By making that little shift, one's life changes. Now when that happens, then, and this is a real life story, then he says that in fact your productivity is so much more than others. The supervisor started noticing him and said, yeah, this guy is quite well, and he's cheerful, he's not complaining, his demeanor is very nice, and his productivity is high. So he starts promoting him. Sitting there without changing himself, he says, I want to be promoted because this is a boring job, it will never happen. You have to start shifting. Every shift that you make, there is a feedback from the universe. And this is where there is trust. If I make a shift, you can't postulate, if you have understood Vedanta, that, oh, there will not be any result. The result may not come immediately, possible. The result may not be as rapid as you may desire, true, because there are past causes which also affect. But that there will be no result is not a possibility. That is not a possibility. Because if you have understood cause and effect relationship, it's not possible. So, right now, what I have in my hand, I have to use it effectively. And that effective use can only happen when I act from a certain depth. Because the superficial mind's analysis is all of that, of dissatisfaction. This didn't happen to me, I didn't get this, he was so nice to my colleague, but I'm working so hard, and he's not, my boss is not even recognizing my heart. Oh, these are all chatters of a superficial mind. Never-ending chatters. One has to pull oneself out. Like Rajan was saying, if you tell yourself, this one is at fault, that one is at fault, that one is at fault, you live like a victim and you use no power that is given to you. And when you think somebody else is at fault, what will you do to change? Nothing, because for you, you are wonderful. And therefore, there are mountains and mountains of dissatisfaction by the time you reach 40s and 50s. Then you can't handle it, so you come to Vedanta, you go to a teacher who says, oh, you're free from mind. Oh, wonderful. At least I can escape and dump this mind and believe I'm limitless. Oh, wonderful. You are on a trip of limitless. Trip. You go from one trip to the other. Nothing has changed. From a material trip to a spiritual trip. That is the change. Both are trips. Nothing is connected to reality. So therefore, these are the shifts which are significant shifts. You have to find a certain depth in your being. And that depth can only come when you give proper messages to yourself. So this is now one of the ways, initially it's not easy. So one of the aid to find a certain depth of is to what we call prana vikshana. So this is what is mentioned, that your breathing and your mind is connected. So that means when you begin to watch your breathing, what happens is automatically the chatter that is going on at a superficial level, it quietens down. Ceaseless chatter. That has to stop. So that means that when you watch your breathing, and just by watching, we are, as Surya is saying, you are not trying to manipulate your breathing. Just by watching, it will become what? More rhythmic. Just by watching. And as it becomes more rhythmic, then, your mind will. Sometimes, I used to find it, when sometimes when some people are listening to Vedanta, they have a bright mind, so they ask one thing, then they'll ask another thing, then they'll ask another thing. It's like, without understanding one thing properly, you now move to something else. Then you move to something else. I used to by their movement, I used to feel like...
Palpitations.
Exactly. There is no leisure. And you get affected because you are interacting and they are bombarding you with one question after the other, and they don't take time to understand, this I got, now whatever, and then whatever, and then what. So I used to, and I used to also get worked up as a result. Then I said, I have to slow down. And that person has such speed that I can't do anything about it. I have to slow down. I don't have to get into the same rhythm as that person is inducing me to do. I have to operate from my rhythm. Then you begin to say, hey, one thing at a time. Let's look into one question. Let's understand that question properly. Not that, I understand, now let's move. That one, you think you have understood, you haven't understood. So that means, let's look at it from all different sides to ensure that we don't make any errors. So that when you get back your center, the other person also calms down. Otherwise, what happens? You are calm initially, but other person's imbalance ruffles you. And you also get engaged. So you have to bring yourself to a center. Once you are at the center, then in fact, you become a trigger for somebody else to change. You don't change because somebody else is all ruffled. If you understand this, you don't have to worry about interacting with anyone. People are of all types. People are all ruffled, they are all impatient, they are all this. And what generally happens is, our teacher used to make fun. He says, we are constantly trying, you said, oh, I avoid this person because I'm getting bad vibes from this person. He said, this bad vibes and all is silly. If you are insecure, then what you want to, this bad vibes, here I am getting bad vibes, this person is too impatient, this person, in fact the whole world, because we don't know our reality, we have one madness or the other. We are all mad until we know the reality. There is abnormally mad and there is normally mad. So that means if you want to avoid interacting, if you find a perfect person to interact with, you will not find anyone including yourself. So these vibes and all, these messages that we give to ourselves, we don't need to give this, but they only create divisions. You are constantly judgmental. You are constantly naming people. You are constantly categorizing people. And in that, you also put a lot of pressure on yourself. And you are just not a natural human being who is just interacting with people without any agenda. So that means the key is what? To find center within yourself. The center has to be so strong, whoever is in the front, you are not shaken. Whoever is in the front. You are not running away from here and there and all. Hey, that means you are all yourself very, very shallow. That center, when you find that, you become source of inspiration. You don't get affected by people who are around you. So these are all the things that you have to become in order to be a deserving recipient of this reality. And meditation gives you an opportunity. When else, tell me, if you don't do meditation, when will you have time to work on yourself? Tell me. When you are sleeping, you don't have a mind. When you are awake, you are interacting with the world and you are operating at a superficial level, and all the time the mind is bombarding you with the messages, this is not right, this is bad, this is this, this is this. How will you come out of it? The only respite that you get is during Vedanta class. So you have almost addiction to Vedanta class. For 1 hour you need your dose. Then you go back to that chapter. Or for once a year or once in 6 months you need that dose to come to something. And then again you are the same. This has to change. Meditation gives you that opportunity to stay with what you have learned and transform yourself. You begin to be the person that Vedanta talks about as being the wise person. You make that effort towards that. So that is, meditation gives you that opportunity. So the first step of meditation is what? Watching the body. The second step is what? Prana. Yeah. Then what we saw is what the third step. Okay, now here it is saying that holding, now see, when you use the literal translation, it says that the hold is mind under control. So this is where, now what we do is, there is a third step. How do you have a mastery over the mind? This is the third step of meditation. Because you need to, it says that the chariot, now it's a very nice analogy. It's a beautiful analogy. This analogy is used in Kathopanishad. A jiva comes to this earth, an individual comes to this earth and is given what? A chariot. A chariot to reach the goal. So what does chariot have? It is a chariot. Then what? You can't have a chariot without a horse, because then you can't go anywhere. So you need a chariot, you need horses that run the chariot. Now the horses and the chariots are there, but if you don't have the reins, then what? It's useless to you. So you are given the reins. In order to manage the reins, there has to be what? A charioteer. So a jiva comes with all of this. So what is a chariot? The chariot is what? the physical body. Then, what are the 5 forces? Senses. You are given 5 senses. As I told you, if there are forms outside, but if you don't have eyes, you can't interact with the forms. So that means you are also given horses. Now, the horses are the senses. What is a rein?
Mind.
Mind is a rein. Mind is a rein because the senses don't just operate in vacuum. The senses are everything that the senses take in is all reported where? To the mind. Now, the mind, so the reins, if these reins, they are reported and you have collected. Now, how skillfully you are going to use this whole mechanism depends upon who?
Intellect.
Excellent. The charioteer, the intellect. So that means everybody has come in this life with a chariot, horses, reins and a charioteer. We all have come with the physical body, the senses, the mind and the intellect.
Intellect or buddhi? Buddhi.
Buddhi. Manas and buddhi. Now, if the buddhi, the charioteer has no goal in life. I don't know where I want to go, I don't know what I'm here for, I'm just kind of passing time. Then what will happen?
You will pass time.
Pass time. Exactly. This is what Namita used to say. Until you come to Vedanta, life is a time pass. Time pass, passing time. From here, then this is boring, then there, then now I've enjoyed enough, I've seen enough, then here, I have done this, we all pass time. And one day we drop. The chariot is taken away, the horses are shut, and the charioteer is gone, over. Now again, try again. So that means, if you want to use the instruments that are given to you efficiently, what do you need to do? You need to cultivate your buddhi, because the buddhi is what?
Chariot.
The buddhi is the one which is going to navigate and what?
Direction.
Direct and give direction to your life. So now, generally, we all operate from what? The mind. So the report comes. Yeah. So the senses report, the report comes, it creates some instincts or some impulses and we act. This is what happens most of the time. If you explain it in terms of neurosciences, there is one center of the brain which is called amygdala. So that means everything gets reported there and it produces instincts. The instincts are what? That you see something, it is getting reported, you create a picture and it will create fear. Or it will create anger. Or it will create whatever, different emotions depending upon what you have received and how, what in matter of seconds, what you have told yourself, what is happening. Now, most of the time we operate like that. Now, there is another center of the brain which is what we call prefrontal cortex. This is a discriminative, this is a reasoning, rational, that brain. So that means, generally, it's not like we only operate from what? These instincts. There are people who are very intelligent, right? So this prefrontal cortex, we all use. The minute you go to school, you are beginning to use your prefrontal cortex. Because when 2 plus 2 is equal to 4, it's not a matter of instinct. You have to what? Learn it. So that means we begin to develop our prefrontal cortex. But mostly our prefrontal cortex is developed, the reasoning, rationality, the discrimination is all with reference to subject matters. the subject matters like science, math or economics or I don't know, whatever you are studying, art, anything. So you apply your prefrontal cortex to what? For developing the thinking brain with reference to so many different things. But if you don't use your prefrontal cortex to redefine who you are and what is your emotional life, what will happen? At work you can be operating from all your strategies and you can use your rational mind and come up with best strategy, but at the emotional level you are still working from where? Instincts. This is why at times you find people who are highly intelligent in one thing but are like kids when it comes to their emotional life. So now, what does Vedanta do? Vedanta uses your prefrontal cortex to what? Undo the emotional, wrong messages that you have given to yourself. You begin to re-understand who you are. You begin to re-understand the world. You begin to re-understand what the nature of the cause of the universe. You re-understand everything. This happens where? At prefrontal cortex. You need, that's why you need a sharp mind to understand Vedanta. This dilly-dally doesn't work for Vedanta. You need a sharp mind because the Pramana operation has two things. One is demonstration of what is said by the Shastra, and second step is what? To show that no logic can contradict what Shastra says. So both operations are both done at the prefrontal cortex. You need a sharp, you to understand all of this. And you not only have to hold everything, but you also, when new inputs are given, you have to connect it to the old and you have to create a coherent picture, not some piecemeal information here and there and you don't know how it comes together as a vision. Also, somehow I have some pieces here and there and I am this emotional person, and emotional person is so non-taken care of that it keeps interfering here and keeps distorting what I receive. None of that will work. So that means you have to use your prefrontal cortex to undo your emotional life, undo the messages you give to yourself, undo everyday chatter that you have within yourself. You have to undo all of that using the wisdom. So that means, in order to engage deeply, we are all so distracted. We are so distracted that we are unable to even engage in one thing properly, and without understanding this properly, you want to connect it all and create some vision which is all incoherent. How do you pull yourself out of this habit? So there is one technique which is given in meditation, and that is japa. Japa is a very important step to discover a certain depth in yourself. Generally, mind moves from one thing to the other. And when it moves from one thing to the other, when it's not able to stay with one given thing, it can never understand that thing properly. Superficial. So, it's not, I can say depth of mind. But how? So, japa is a technique where you work towards depth of mind. What do? You tell yourself for 10 minutes, not for the whole day, just for 10 minutes, I am going to do this chanting. What is the chant? Let's say Surya does Om Ishaya Namah. So that means Ishaya Namaha, what will happen? You chant 3 times and what will happen? The mind will start talking, thinking about, oh Mount Kailash, oh that one trip is still due. Oh, I've been to Kedar, but you know this Kailash, I still have to make it. Oh, I don't know which trip, you know, this Hina Travels is great because they give good Gujarati food. So that means you go. And this is how everybody's mind is. There is no exception. Because mind is used to going from one thing to the other. And before, this is how we all think. So you don't even realize whether it is depth or it is superficial, nothing. It's just, this is how it goes for everyone. Now, you have told yourself that for next 10 minutes I want to do one task. You've given a task to the mind. And mind ends up doing what? Something else. Even for 10 minutes, you don't have your mind totally with you. That is a huge insight. Huge insight. When you don't have 10 minutes of your mind with you, how are you going to use this mind to discover infinity? Tell me. So that means you have to what? Slowly and gently bring it back. This is a method to gain certain focus and certain depth. It's a method. So now that you have given a task to your mind, you say, now what? Come back. At least for next 10 minutes. Here, again, there is no self-judgment. Oh, I'm sitting in meditation and oh, I can never, actually my mind keeps going. You keep on what? Beating yourself. Don't do that. The purpose of meditation is what? Gently bring it back without self-judgment. So then you bring it back. Then you bring it back. Every time it goes, gently bring it back. You will see over a period of time that the number of times that it goes away from the chant will what? Reduce. Before it happened like after every 2 chants it went somewhere else. Over a period of time you could hold it for at least 3 minutes before it went. Then 5 minutes. Then it will become less and less and less. So that means you get a non-distracted mind. This is important. Now, the other thing that it does, now this non-distracted mind is not only at the time of meditation, you come out of meditation, you go to work. Your mind will naturally become what? Less distracted than before. The chatter and this one thing to the other all the time, that will naturally reduce. Naturally reduce. You don't have to like put pressure, it will. This is a technique. And when it reduces, you are able to focus on any given thing that you are doing and you gain a certain depth. Whatever you are doing. This is why sometimes the thing that I am most sensitive to is whether what I am teaching is taking some deeper roots or not. And the only way I can know whether it is taking deeper roots or not is what you say about Vedanta. The questions that you ask. Sometimes when I see that it's not taking deeper roots, it's still all fluffy ideas and one idea, oh this one said that and that one said this, it irritates me. Now it's my practice. I keep telling people. because I'm not indifferent to your learning. If I'm giving a public talk, I don't have any agenda, but if you come and make such an effort to be here with me for 10 days, I am interested in your learning. But in spite of my trying so hard, according to me, if you still operate at that level, it upsets me. So I many times tell Surya that, I'm getting upset sometimes. And that's my training. I have to find the center. I can do what I can do. If your thing is only this, then that's it. I can't do anything more. The only thing I can do is to help you go a little deeper. Other than that, I can't do. But I have to do it without pressure. I can't carry the burden of making you see the realities. I can't. I can only be responsible for what I communicate. And I have to make absolutely sure that my communication is as clear as